The massive alien ship appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning. It moved slowly past Mars, its sleek purple hull gleaming in the sunlight. Earth's scientific community noticed it first, but within hours, everyone with a telescope could see it. The ship was 3 times the size of the largest human space station. Laura Mitchell stood at the United Nations podium, her hand steady despite the weight of the moment. As Earth's chosen ambassador, she had practiced this speech countless times. The room was packed with representatives from every nation, their faces showing a mix of fear and hope. "The alien ship will reach Earth orbit in 6 hours," she said, her voice clear and strong. "They have sent us peaceful messages in multiple languages. They call themselves the Galactic Council." In the front row, Defense Secretary Christopher Banks nodded slowly. His military background made him cautious, but even he had to admit the aliens' approach seemed peaceful. They had made no aggressive moves, kept their weapon systems powered down, and responded to all communications with patience. The alien ship carried High Speaker Zixtal and his diplomatic team. They were tall, graceful beings with silvery skin and large, thoughtful eyes. When they stepped out of their shuttle at the UN landing pad, Laura noticed how they moved with careful precision, as if every gesture had meaning. "Greetings, people of Earth," Zixtal spoke through a translation device. His voice had a musical quality that made everyone lean forward to listen. "We come as representatives of the Galactic Council, a union of 37 spacefaring species. We have watched your world with great interest. The first meetings went better than anyone had hoped. The aliens were curious about everything: human art, music, food, and especially their history. But it was human technology that really caught their attention." "Remarkable," Zixtal said, examining the simple smartphone. "You achieved in 200 years what took most species a millennium. Your rate of advancement is unprecedented." But not everything went smoothly. During a tour of a military museum, the aliens showed their first signs of concern. They stared at displays of ancient battles, modern weapons, and space defense systems with growing unease. "Your species is quite contradictory," Zixtal told Laura during a private meeting. "You create beautiful art and music, yet you also design weapons of incredible destruction. You speak of peace while maintaining powerful armies." Laura smiled. "We believe peace comes through strength and preparation. History has taught us this lesson many times." The council representatives spent months studying human culture and technology. They were fascinated by human adaptability, how quickly people adjusted to new ideas and situations, but they also seemed worried about something they wouldn't fully explain. One day, Christopher Banks found a council member named Valera studying old war footage with intense concentration. "I don't understand," she said, pointing to a scene of soldiers using camouflage and guerrilla tactics. "Why not fight in the open? Why use deception?" Banks tried to explain human military strategy, but the concept seemed to confuse her more. "Your species thinks differently," she finally said. "You see patterns we miss and find solutions we would never consider." As the first year of contact passed, more council ships arrived. They'd brought amazing technologies: faster than light travel, advanced medical equipment, and clean energy systems. In exchange, they wanted to learn about human innovation and creativity. But Laura noticed something interesting. While the council had more advanced technology, they used it in very predictable ways. They followed strict protocols and rarely tried new approaches. Humans, on the other hand, constantly found new ways to use and combine technologies. The council established an embassy in Geneva, and humans began visiting council space stations. Scientists from both sides worked together on research projects. Everything seemed to be going well. Then came the warning. "There are others in the galaxy who may not appreciate your unique qualities," Zixtal told Laura during a late-night meeting. "Some species fear what they don't understand. And humans, forgive me, are very difficult to understand." Laura thought about humanity's history, how fear of the unknown had often led to conflict. "Are we in danger?" she asked directly. Zixtal's expression became very serious. "The Council will do what we can to protect Earth. But you should know that not all spacefaring races share our peaceful intentions. Some, like the Krell Empire, see new species as potential threats or targets." The warning was clear. Humanity needed to be ready. In response, Earth's governments worked together like never before. They used Council technology to build better defenses and stronger ships, but they did it in their own unique way, combining alien tech with human ingenuity in ways that sometimes surprised even their Council advisors. Christopher Banks led the effort to create Earth's first real space fleet. They built ships that looked very different from Council vessels. While Council ships were elegant and specialized, human ships were sturdy and adaptable, capable of being quickly modified for different roles. "Your approach is unusual," Zixtal commented, watching the construction through a viewport in orbit. "Most species copy our designs exactly. Humans prefer to find our own way," Laura explained. "We learn from others, but we also trust our instincts." By the end of the third year of contact, Earth had changed dramatically. Cities now had advanced transportation systems, hospitals used alien healing technologies, and the first human colonies were being established on other worlds. But they hadn't forgotten the warning. Every new colony had strong defenses. Every civilian ship had military escorts. Humanity prepared for trouble while hoping it would never come. The Council watched all of this with mixed feelings. They appreciated human creativity and drive, but something about humanity's military preparation made them nervous. Perhaps they sensed what humans knew from long experience, that peace is precious precisely because it can be lost. As Laura Mitchell looked out her office window at the mix of human and alien ships in orbit, she thought about how far they'd come. Humanity had joined the galactic community while staying true to itself. They had learned new technologies while keeping their unique way of thinking. She just hoped it would be enough for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the deep space between stars, unknown to both humans and the Council, the Krell Empire was already making plans. They had been watching Earth too, but with very different intentions. Soon, humanity would face its first real test among the stars. But that would be another story. The human colony on Proxima Centauri was 3 years old when the attack came. 5,000 people lived there now, in domed cities that sparkled under the red dwarf star's light. Commander Alice Winters had just finished her morning inspection of the colony's defense systems when the alarms started blaring. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, her second-in-command reported, his voice steady despite the situation. "They're not responding to hails." Alice rushed to the command center, her mind already working through defense plans. The colony had good protection. Shield generators, automated turrets, and a small fleet of patrol ships. But they had never expected to use them so soon. The attackers appeared as dark shapes against the sky. Their ships looked like giant insects made of metal. The Krell Empire had finally made its move. "All civilians to the shelter zones," Alice ordered through the colony's communication system. "This is not a drill. Defense teams to your stations." The Krell probably thought they had chosen an easy target. A small human colony, far from Earth, defended by inexperienced troops. They were wrong. Alice watched as 6 Krell warships moved into attack formation. They were bigger than the human ships, covered in heavy armor and bristling with weapons. But Alice smiled. Size wasn't everything. "Launch our drones," she commanded. Hundreds of small, unmanned craft shot out from hidden bays around the colony. The Krell ships ignored them at first. After all, what harm could such tiny things do? That was their first mistake. The drones didn't attack directly. Instead, they created a complex pattern of movement, weaving between the Krell ships. Hidden sensors mapped every detail of the enemy vessels, finding weak points in their armor. "They're launching fighters," someone reported. Sure enough, smaller ships poured out of the Krell warships. They looked dangerous, with sharp edges and powerful weapons. "Perfect," Alice said. Start Phase 2. The human defense plan was something no council race would have thought of. Instead of meeting the Krell head-on, they had prepared a trap. The colony's shields weren't just for defense. They could project false sensor readings. The Krell fighters dove toward what they thought was the colony's main power core. Instead, they found empty space. The real buildings were elsewhere, hidden by advanced holographic technology. Now, Alice ordered. The defense turrets opened fire, not with normal weapons, but with special electromagnetic pulses. The Krell ship's systems started failing. Their fighters lost formation, confused by conflicting sensor data. But the Krell weren't defeated yet. Their main ships turned their biggest guns toward the colony. That's when Alice revealed her last surprise. "Launch the ghosts," she commanded. From underground hangars, 5 human ships appeared. They were smaller than the Krell vessels, but much faster, and they had something special: experimental stealth systems that made them nearly invisible to Krell sensors. The human ships moved like dancers, striking at the Krell vessels' weak points. They didn't try to match the Krell's power. Instead, they used speed and surprise, hitting and running before the enemy could respond. "Their shields are failing," Alice's tactical officer reported. "They didn't expect us to find the weak spots in their armor so quickly." The Krell tried to adjust their tactics, but they couldn't keep up with the constantly changing human attack patterns. Their rigid military training hadn't prepared them for this kind of fight. One of the Krell ships exploded as a ghost fighter hit its engine core. Another lost power and started drifting. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but the human drones had already disabled their faster-than-light drives. In just 2 hours, the battle was over. The mighty Krell attack force had been defeated by a small colonial defense group, but Alice knew this was just the beginning. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "The Krell have made their move. And tell them we took prisoners." The council representatives were shocked when they received news of the battle. They had never seen anyone defeat the Krell so completely, let alone a young colony's defense force. "How did you do it?" a council military observer asked Alice later, studying footage of the battle. "Your ships were outnumbered and outgunned. We didn't try to match their strength," Alice explained. "We used their expectations against them. They thought we would fight like everyone else, like the council races. Instead, we fought like humans." The observer looked confused. "But your tactics, they seemed chaotic, unpredictable." Alice smiled. "Exactly. Humans have learned that sometimes the best pattern is no pattern at all." The captured Krell warriors were another surprise. They were tall, insect-like beings with complex armor and rigid bodies. But what shocked everyone was how they reacted to defeat. "You fought without honor," one Krell commander complained. "You used tricks and deception." "We fought to win," Alice told them, "and to protect our people. That's all the honor we needed." The council sent representatives to study the battle site. They were amazed by how the humans had combined council technology with their own ideas. The drone network, the holographic defenses, the ghost ships, all of it was unique to human military thinking. But the council also brought worried news. The Krell Empire was angry. They saw their defeat as an insult, a challenge that had to be answered. They were preparing for war. Alice walked through her colony that evening, watching families go about their lives under the dome's protective shield. Children played in parks while their parents worked in labs and offices. This was what they had fought to protect. She received a message from Earth's Defense Command. They were sending reinforcements, ships, weapons, and troops. But they also sent something else: approval to start preparing for a longer war. "The Krell won't stop with one defeat," the message said. "So we'll show them why humans are the wrong species to attack." As she looked up at the stars, Alice thought about what was coming. The Krell would return with bigger ships and stronger weapons. But they still wouldn't understand what made humans different. It wasn't their technology or their weapons that made humans dangerous. It was their ability to think differently, to adapt, to find new solutions to old problems. The Krell Empire was about to learn a hard lesson. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history learning how to overcome stronger opponents. The real war was about to begin. The Krell Empire's war declaration arrived 3 days after their defeat at Proxima Centauri. They expected the humans to respond through diplomatic channels, maybe beg for peace. Instead, they got Captain Daniel Hayes and his small fleet of ships. Daniel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, looking at the star map. Red dots showed Krell supply lines stretching across space. They thought these routes were secret. They were wrong. "All ships ready, Captain," his first officer reported. "The Krell don't know we're here." Daniel nodded. His fleet was small, just 5 ships, but they were special. Each one had been built with the latest stealth technology and carried weapons the Krell had never seen before. "Begin Operation Phantom Strike," he ordered. The human ships moved like ghosts through space, their engines running silent. The Krell had big warships and strong weapons, but they always followed the same patterns. They never expected anyone to attack their supply lines directly. The first target was a Krell fuel station. Daniel's ships appeared from nowhere, fired their weapons, and vanished before the Krell could respond. They left behind a destroyed station and very confused enemies. "Next target," Daniel said calmly. "Let's show them what a real space guerrilla campaign looks like." Over the next week, Daniel's fleet hit 20 different Krell targets. They never attacked the same way twice. Sometimes they used drones, sometimes electronic warfare, sometimes pure speed and surprise. The Krell never knew where they would strike next. The Council observers watched all this with growing amazement. One of them, an alien named Kickstall, asked to join Daniel's fleet to study human warfare. "Your tactics make no sense," Kickstall said, watching the humans plan their next attack. "You don't follow any standard military doctrine." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly why they work. The Krell expect everyone to fight like the Council races, with big fleets and direct attacks. We're showing them something new." The Krell try to adapt. They sent warships to guard their supply lines, but this only made them easier targets. The human ships would appear, cause chaos, and disappear before the Krell could fight back. "Sir," Daniel's sensor officer called out one day, "we found something big, a main Krell supply base, hidden in an asteroid field." The base was heavily defended, with dozens of warships and strong shields. Any normal commander would have avoided it, but Daniel wasn't normal. "Perfect," he said. "Time to try something really different." He divided his small fleet into even smaller groups. Some ships pretended to be damaged and drifted near the base. Others hid behind asteroids. The Defiant itself sailed right toward the base's front door. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "They're demanding our surrender." "Send them our reply," Daniel ordered. The reply wasn't a message. It was a signal that activated hundreds of small devices Daniel's ships had secretly planted on nearby asteroids over the past few days. Each device created false sensor readings, making it look like a massive human fleet was approaching. The Krell panicked. They sent their ships out to fight this imaginary fleet, spreading their defenses thin. That's when Daniel's real attack began. His ships darted between the confused Krell vessels, firing precisely at weak points. The false sensor readings kept showing new threats appearing everywhere, forcing the Krell to constantly change their positions. "Their command center is exposed," Daniel's tactical officer reported. "Fire the new missiles," Daniel ordered. These weren't normal weapons. Instead of explosions, they released clouds of tiny robots that ate through the base's armor and disabled its systems. Within hours, the mighty Krell base was helpless. When news of this victory reached the Council, it caused an uproar. The Council races had never seen warfare like this. They didn't understand how such a small force could defeat a much larger enemy. "Your species fights like water," one Council member told Daniel later. "You flow around obstacles instead of hitting them directly. You find paths we cannot see." But the Krell weren't finished. They were gathering their full military might, preparing for a massive invasion of human space. They would send thousands of ships, thinking that sheer numbers would guarantee victory. Daniel knew this was coming. That's why his raids weren't just about destroying supplies. They were gathering information. Every attack taught them more about Krell technology and tactics. They still think like insects, he explained to his crew. They'd follow patterns and expect everyone else to do the same. That's why they'll lose. Back on Earth, military leaders studied Daniel's successful tactics. They began preparing new strategies, combining human creativity with alien technology in ways no one had tried before. The Council tried to negotiate peace, but the Krell wouldn't listen. They had lost face, and their rigid society demanded revenge. They couldn't understand that every delay just gave humanity more time to prepare. The Krell think they're teaching us a lesson, Daniel told his crew as they prepared for another raid. But we're the ones doing the teaching. We're showing them that the galaxy has changed. The old ways of fighting won't work anymore. His words proved true sooner than anyone expected. The Krell launched a major attack on one of their raided bases, thinking they had trapped Daniel's fleet. Instead, they found empty space and false sensor readings. While they wasted time and resources there, Daniel's ships were hitting 3 other targets. The Council's military observers wrote long reports about human warfare. They noted how humans used deception, surprise, and psychological warfare, concepts that many alien races struggle to understand. Humans don't just fight with weapons, one observer wrote. They fight with their minds. They turn their enemy's strength against them. They make their opponents defeat themselves. As the war escalated, more human fleets joined the fight. Each one used different tactics, making it impossible for the Krell to predict what would happen next. But they all learned from Daniel's first successful raids. One evening, looking out at the stars from his ship's observation deck, Daniel thought about how this war was changing everything. The Krell had expected an easy victory over a young spacefaring race. Instead, they had awakened something they didn't understand. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were showing the galaxy a new way of thinking about warfare. And this was just the beginning. The real test would come soon, when the Krell launched their full invasion. But thanks to Daniel's raids, humanity would be ready. They had learned the Krell's weaknesses, tested new weapons, and proved that superior numbers didn't always mean victory. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Major Elizabeth Cooper checked her stealth suit one last time. Around her, 20 Special Forces soldiers did the same. They were inside a small ship heading toward the Krell homeworld, about to do something no one thought possible. Remember, she told her team, we're not here to fight. We're here to show them they're not safe anywhere. The Krell thought their homeworld was completely secure. They had detection systems, defense platforms, and thousands of ships protecting it. But they hadn't counted on human ingenuity. Elizabeth's ship looked like a piece of space debris from the outside. Inside, it carried some of humanity's best soldiers and newest technology. They had spent months planning this mission, studying Krell patterns and habits. Approaching the outer defense grid, the pilot whispered, "They haven't spotted us." The ship drifted past massive Krell warships, looking like just another piece of floating junk. Elizabeth's team had trained for this moment. They knew that sometimes the best way past a defense was to look so harmless that no one paid attention. Meanwhile, in another part of space, Lieutenant Kevin Martinez led his fighter squadron on a very different mission. His pilots flew new ships that were smaller and faster than anything the Krell had seen before. "Form up," he ordered over the radio. "Show them what space dogfighting really means." The Krell didn't understand this kind of combat. Their fighters always flew in rigid formations, following strict patterns. Kevin's pilots flew like daredevils, spinning and weaving through space in ways that seemed impossible. "They're launching interceptors," his wingman reported. "Perfect," Kevin smiled. Let's show them why humans are the best pilots in the galaxy. The battle that followed looked more like a dance than a fight. The human fighters moved in 3 dimensions, using maneuvers that made the Krell pilots dizzy. They had learned these techniques from studying birds and aerial combat on Earth. Back at the Krell homeworld, Elizabeth's team had landed their ship in a maintenance bay. They moved through the massive city like shadows, their stealth suits making them almost invisible. "Place the devices according to the plan," she ordered quietly. These weren't bombs or weapons. They were something much more clever, small computers that would hack into the Krell networks and show them just how vulnerable they were. The Krell never expected an enemy to reach their homeworld. They thought their defenses were perfect. That's why they didn't notice when Elizabeth's team started activating their devices. Suddenly, every screen in the Krell capital started showing the same message. Your defenses can be broken. Your world can be reached. Consider peace. The Krell leaders were shocked. How had humans gotten past all their security? While they were trying to figure this out, Kevin's squadron was teaching them another hard lesson. His pilots had drawn the Krell fighters into an asteroid field. The Krell thought this was a mistake. Their larger ships had trouble maneuvering in such tight spaces. But human pilots trained for exactly these conditions. "Split and strike," Kevin ordered. His squadron broke into pairs, darting between asteroids like they were racing through city streets. The Krell pilots tried to follow and failed. Their rigid training hadn't prepared them for this kind of flying. One by one, their ships crashed into asteroids or were disabled by precise human attacks. "Sir," one of Kevin's pilots called out, "they're retreating." It was unheard of. Krell fighters never retreated, but they had never faced pilots like this before. The Council's military observers watched all of this with amazement. They had never seen warfare like this. The humans weren't just fighting. They were changing the rules of space combat. "Your species takes too many risks," a Council advisor told Kevin later. "By our calculations, many of your maneuvers should be impossible." Kevin laughed. "That's why they work. The impossible is just something no one's tried yet." Elizabeth's team completed their mission without firing a single shot. They left the Krell homeworld the same way they arrived, quietly, like ghosts. But they had done something no enemy had ever done before. They had shown the Krell they weren't invincible. The psychological impact was enormous. The Krell had always believed their homeworld was safe. Now their people were scared, looking over their shoulders, wondering what else the humans might do. The beauty of it, Elizabeth told her team as they headed home, is that we could have done much more. But sometimes the fear of what might happen is more powerful than any actual attack. The Council studied these events carefully. They noted how humans used fear and uncertainty as weapons, how they found ways around problems instead of just hitting them head-on. "This species," one Council member wrote, "doesn't just think outside the box. They act like there is no box at all." The Krell response to these humiliations was predictable. They prepared their biggest fleet yet. They would throw everything they had at Earth, thinking that overwhelming force would finally work. But humans had more surprises waiting. While Elizabeth's team was proving the Krell homeworld wasn't safe, and Kevin's pilots were rewriting the rules of space combat, other human forces were preparing new strategies. "They still don't understand," Kevin told his pilots. "They think war is about who has the biggest ships or the most weapons. We know it's about who can think differently, who can adapt faster." Elizabeth's mission and Kevin's victories marked a turning point in the war. The Krell were no longer fighting just another enemy. They were facing a species that simply didn't follow the rules they understood. Human military leaders watched all this with satisfaction. Every victory, every successful mission, proved what they had always known. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology, but their ability to think creatively and adapt quickly. The final battle was coming. The Krell would throw everything they had at Earth, expecting a traditional space battle. They still hadn't learned that humans never fought the way anyone expected. As Elizabeth and Kevin prepared their forces for what was coming, They knew one thing for certain. This war would end in a way no one, not even the Council, could predict. The stage was set for the final confrontation, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy one last surprise. General Richard Bennett stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching as the largest Krell fleet ever assembled appeared at the edge of the solar system. 3,000 warships filled the space around Pluto, their metal hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. They'd brought everything they had, his aide said quietly. Richard nodded. Just as we expected. Send the signal to begin Operation Checkmate. The Krell thought they were ready for anything humans might do. Their fleet was arranged in perfect formation, with their strongest ships in front and support vessels protected behind them. It was textbook military strategy. But humans had stopped following textbooks a long time ago. All units, execute your orders, Richard commanded. Around the solar system, human forces sprang into action. Captain Daniel Hayes's stealth ships appeared behind the Krell fleet, cutting off their retreat. Major Elizabeth Cooper's Special Forces teams, hidden on captured Krell ships, began sabotaging key vessels from the inside. Lieutenant Kevin Martinez's fighters launched from hidden bases on distant asteroids. The Krell expected a head-on battle. Instead, they got chaos. Suddenly, the space around their fleet lit up with thousands of small lights. The humans had scattered millions of tiny mirrors throughout the solar system, creating a massive light show that confused Krell sensors. They can't tell which signals are real and which are fake, Richard's tactical officer reported with a smile. The Krell formation began to break apart as ships tried to respond to phantom threats. That's when the real attack began. Human ships appeared from hiding places all around the solar system. They didn't match the Krell ships for size or power, but they didn't need to. Each human vessel had a specific job, and they had practiced this plan for months. Elizabeth's teams disabled the Krell flagship's main weapons. Daniel's ships cut through supply lines with surgical precision. Kevin's fighters drew enemy ships into elaborate traps. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Launch the drones, Richard ordered. Thousands of small, unmanned ships emerged from hidden bases on Mars, Jupiter's moons, and even inside Saturn's rings. These drones weren't weapons. They were carrying something else. Broadcasting now, his communications officer announced. The drones began transmitting images and videos directly to every Krell ship. They showed scenes from human history, not just wars, but also peace treaties, humanitarian missions, and moments of mercy toward defeated enemies. Send the message, Richard said. His words were translated into the Krell language and broadcast across their fleet. You thought we were savages because we fight differently. But we fight this way so we can choose peace when possible. Surrender now, and we will show you what humans do after a war ends. The Krell commanders were confused. In their culture, showing mercy was a sign of weakness. But they had also seen enough of human warfare to know they couldn't win this battle. For the first time in their history, the Krell faced an enemy they couldn't understand. An enemy that could defeat them but chose not to destroy them. Sir, the tactical officer reported, the Krell flagship is signaling. They want to discuss terms. Richard smiled. This was the real victory he had been working toward. Not just defeating the Krell, but showing them a better way. The Council observers could hardly believe what they were seeing. The mighty Krell Empire, which had never lost a war, was surrendering. But even more surprising was what happened next. Richard invited the Krell commanders onto his ship for the peace talks. He treated them with respect, not as defeated enemies, but as future allies. Your weapons are strong, the Krell Supreme Commander said. But this behavior after victory, this is what we do not understand. Strength isn't just about winning fights, Richard explained. It's about knowing when to stop fighting, about turning enemies into friends. The peace treaty that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Humans didn't demand territory or resources from the Krell. Instead, they asked for cultural exchange programs, joint scientific projects, and trade agreements. We don't want to rule you. Richard told the Krell leaders. "We want to work with you. Both our species can learn from each other." The council representatives wrote long reports about these events. They noted how humans had won the war not just through clever tactics, but through understanding their enemy. "This species continues to surprise us," one council member wrote. "They fight with incredible creativity and skill, yet show remarkable wisdom in victory. Perhaps we have all misjudged them." In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Krell Empire opened its borders for the first time, learning new ways of thinking from human teachers. Human military tactics were studied across the galaxy, not just for their cleverness, but for their restraint. Elizabeth's Special Forces teams became peacekeepers, teaching other races about stealth and precision. Daniel's fleet crews helped establish new trade routes. Kevin's pilots started an interstellar flight school. Richard stood at his office window on Earth, looking at the stars. A Krell ship was landing nearby, not for war this time, but bringing students for the new Galactic Defense Academy. "The Council wants to know how we knew the Krell would surrender," his aide said. Richard smiled. "We studied their history, their culture. We knew they respected strength, but we also knew they had never seen strength combined with mercy. That was the key, showing them something they had never imagined possible." The war had ended, but its lessons would be remembered for generations. Humans had proved they could fight in ways that defied understanding. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that the greatest victories don't always come from destroying your enemy. Sometimes, the best way to win a war is to show your enemy a better path. In the Council archives, this conflict would be studied for centuries, not just as a military campaign, but as the moment when the galaxy learned that true strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the ability to choose peace. The human way of war had changed the galaxy forever, but it was their way of peace that would define their legacy among the stars.